Good morning, students. Let's continue. Please open to page number 40. We'll start from here, the first line. No doubt he was expecting sentence of death. Now, I hope you remember Romeo, after killing Tybalt, he went straight away to Friar Lawrence. Now, actually, he was expecting that the Prince of Verona, he might sentence him to death. But he was saved, and the only punishment that was given to him was that he should leave the country. When later the good priest brought him news that the prince had only sentenced him to a life abroad, the thought of being separated from his Juliet made him made this seem just as heavy as a punishment. Now, the moment good priest, the Friar Lawrence, he got the news that Prince of Verona is not sentencing to death, he wants you to leave the country as soon as possible. Now, there was this thought in Romeo's mind that he will have to leave Juliet, and that single thought was actually troubling him a lot. For a time, he abandoned himself to his sorrow and was deaf to all his old friends' words of hope and advice. Suddenly, he actually was shocked that he'll have to leave Juliet and go out of the country. And he became deaf. He was not at all listening to the Friar Lawrence. He was lost in his own sorrow. Romeo remained in this state until he got a message from Juliet asking him to see her. Now, Romeo was surprised, he was shocked, or he was actually in deep sorrow when he got the message from Juliet that she is willing to see him. I'm sorry. This is some degree relieved him. Now, somewhat, this message was a kind of a relief for him. He would now at least have a chance of saying goodbye before he went away. So he thought maybe this is the good way of saying goodbye to Juliet. Finally, he got the chance to be with Juliet. Friar Lawrence tried his best to relieve his sorrow and despair. Sorrow and despair means sadness, and held out the hope of a happy end to his troubles. Now, Friar Lawrence, he was being a good friend. He kept telling him, he tried to convince him that everything will be fine. He kept on saying that if, you don't have to worry, everything will be okay and there won't be any fights or any quarrels between the families. But Romeo was filled with sorrow. He was not ready to understand or listen to any of this right now. At any rate, both Juliet and Romeo were still alive and well, and perhaps the prince might be moved to pardon them. So Friar Lawrence, he even told them that maybe, the moment this Prince of Verona, he'll get to know that you're married and you both are fine, maybe, his heart will melt and he'll be kind towards you. His marriage with Juliet might still bring about peaceful relations between the rival families. This is what he thought, that maybe their marriage will bring peace between the rival families. For the present, Friar Lawrence advised him to stay for a while in Mantua, which was not far away. So for some time, maybe Friar Lawrence, he advised him that he should go and stay in Mantua. He'll be safe there, and he said, till the time everything is okay here in the country, I want you to stay out of Verona. There he could keep in touch with Verona and await his chance of making good. To this advice, Romeo now listened and prepared to visit Juliet before he left the country. Now somehow Romeo was relieved and he accepted. He thought that this is the right advice. He'll go and he'll stay in Mantua. That's a place near Verona. From there, he can actually, make a visit to Verona, or he can just understand what is happening in Verona. He can just keep in touch. Now finally he moves and he goes to meet Juliet. Both joyful and sad was this second meeting. At night time, when the rest of the family were in bed. To be for a few hours together was joy. At the same time, Romeo and Juliet were sad that they had so soon to part, perhaps forever. Now, Romeo and Juliet, they were a little worried. Maybe they were happy because they were together for a few hours, but they were sad that maybe this is the last time when they are together. Maybe they'll be separated forever. So they were somewhat worried. As the day began to break, Romeo decided that it was time for him to be gone and live, or stay and die. Now, Romeo had only two choices. First, be gone and live. Second, stay and die. So, at the dawn time, Romeo thought it's better that he should run away. If the people of the house, who were now awaking, discovered him, they would take his life. In his parting words, Romeo promised to keep writing to Juliet from Montour and cheered her with the hope that they would yet live happily to look back on their present difficulties. Romeo, he even promised Juliet that very soon, all their troubles will be gone, they'll be happy and they'll be together. Romeo then softly descended from the window of Juliet's room and went away in the faint light of the morning. Now it was the morning time, and Romeo, without troubling or without making any noise or any distraction, he just left Juliet's room through the window. Poor Juliet, strange doubts and fears crept into her heart, and she could not keep back her tears. Now, poor Juliet, she was actually crying for Romeo. She kept crying, and the fear or the thoughts, they were actually troubling her a lot. Soon after daybreak, her mother, the Lady Capulet, came into her room and found her pale and tearful. Now, on that same day, Juliet's mother, when she came to her room, she saw that Juliet was tearful, she was crying, she was sad, she was all pale. She thought that Juliet was sorrowing for the death of her cousin Tybalt, but she had now brought news which she hoped might turn Juliet's mind from that sad event and prove a happy surprise for her. Now, Juliet's mother, she saw that she's crying and she's sad, she's pale. Her mother, she thought that maybe she's crying over her cousin's death, right? And therefore, to cheer her up, she had another news for Juliet. And she thought that maybe if she'll give her the other news, Juliet will feel much better. Now, what was the news? The old Lord Capulet, knowing nothing of the Juliet's love marriage, had for some time past been planning his daughter's future. Now, Lord Capulet was Juliet's father. For last few days, he had been planning something good for Juliet's future. He had chosen as her husband a nobleman, Count Paris, who seemed to him, it says here, who seemed to him in every way worthy of her. Now, Lord Capulet, he had chosen Count Paris for Juliet. He thought he is the right person for Juliet, and Juliet will be happy with him. Then he supposed that Juliet would be proud and glad to accept him as a husband. He even thought that maybe Juliet will be happy, she'll feel proud, and she will accept Count Paris as her husband. But he had no idea that Juliet was already married to Romeo. As Paris was quite willing to have so sweet a wife, and there was no reason for delay, Capulet had arranged the marriage in few days' time. Now, as there was no reason, Paris, even Count Paris, he liked Juliet and everything was sorted out. So there was no need of trouble, or there was no problem as such. That's the reason why Lord Capulet, he arranged for the marriage in few days. This was the news which her mother had for Juliet. Now, what was the news? That Juliet was supposed to be married to, she was supposed to marry to Count Paris. But instead of cheering Juliet, such news, as you may imagine, served only to increase her unhappiness. Now, the moment she got such news, such sad news, her happiness vanished away. She felt so sad she started crying all over again. Her mother was puzzled to see how Juliet, on her part, put forward every argument she could think of to stop or delay the proposed marriage. Now, Juliet was not at all willing to marry Count Paris, and there's a reason that she was already married. And she tried all the arguments possible, all the reasons possible to delay the marriage or to avoid the marriage. And her mother was quite troubled to see the way Juliet was reacting. She earnestly pointed out that she knew too little of the intended husband, that she was still too young for marriage, that it was too soon after the death of her cousin Tybalt. Now, Juliet gave two reasons. First, that she was too young to get married right now. Second, that it was too soon after her cousin's death to get married. In fact, she put forward every reason except the true one, namely, she was married already. Now, she kept giving him different reasons, but she could not, she kept giving different reasons to her mother, but she could not tell her mother that she was already married. Yeah? Okay, let's continue. But her excuses, poor girl, only made her parents angry. Now, whatever her excuses were, she was trying to avoid getting married, but her excuses were not at all, being accepted by her parents. In fact, her excuses were making them angry. Okay. To her father, it seemed that in objecting to the marriage, she was only putting difficulties in the way of her own happy future. Now, somewhat Juliet's father thought that the way she is delaying the marriage or refusing to get married to Count Paris, what she's actually doing, she's actually delaying her happy future, right? He was so angry that in cruel, unfatherly words, he sharply ordered her to be ready by the Thursday following, which was the day he had arranged for her marriage to Paris. Now, Count here, Lord Capulet, he was so angry that, he even forgot that he was Juliet's father. He got so sharp and rude, he even ordered Juliet to be ready for the Thursday. And he decided that on Thursday, Juliet should get married to Count Paris. Then he walked out of the room. When Juliet turned to speak to her mother, hoping to win her sympathy, the Lady Capulet followed her husband out. Now, even Lady Capulet, she was not supporting Juliet. She had no idea why Juliet was being so rude and was giving different excuses, just to escape the marriage. Even her old nurse was against her. Like the nurse who was taking care of her, even she was against of Juliet's behavior. She was against her. She was not accepting the way she was. She told Juliet that since she could not have Romeo, she was foolish to refuse a match that was even better. So this old nurse, she told Juliet that, since you cannot marry Romeo, you should not refuse such a good match as that of Count Paris. In her despair, Juliet decided to get the advice of the good-hearted, kindly priest. Now, Juliet was filled with sadness, and finally she decided that she would go and meet the priest, Friar Lawrence. She told her parents she was going to ask his blessings. Friar Lawrence already knew of the intended marriage. Now, Friar Lawrence already knew about the marriage. He was well aware of it. So when she went to Friar Lawrence, he was aware of the fact that very soon Juliet was to be married to Count Paris. Now Count Paris had visited him to make arrangements for the ceremony. Now, how he was aware of the fact? Friar Lawrence, Count Paris, he had visited Friar Lawrence to make arrangements for the ceremony, and indeed had not yet left when Juliet arrived. Now, Count Paris was already there when Juliet arrived. Paris went, as it would not be proper for him to stay while Juliet was with the priest. Now, Count Paris was a decent man. The moment he saw that Juliet was there with the Friar Lawrence, he left very soon. "I shall come for you," he said to her early on Thursday morning. So Paris, he left and he said to the priest that I'll come on the Thursday morning to take you for the ceremony. Alone with the priest, Juliet earnestly begged his advice and help. Now, when Juliet was alone with the priest, she begged the priest to help her, or to give her some advice how she can actually be saved or avoid this marriage with Count Paris. She already knew that she was married to Romeo. Even Friar Lawrence was aware of the fact that Juliet is married to Romeo. And that is why Juliet, she wanted some advice so that she could ignore or avoid this whole ceremony. She wanted to avoid it. And of course, she was already married, so she cannot marry twice. Okay, so that is it. We'll do till here today, and we'll continue the rest in the next video. We've done 2 pages, and I really want you to read these 2 pages. Otherwise, if you'll miss it, you'll not understand the story. Make sure that you watch all the videos, and as of now, just do one thing. Reading is very important. You should know the story very well. You should know the names. You should know the characters, right? Please go through it and read it. Read it nicely. And for the language, I've already completed 2 topics. That's your essay writing and your letter writing. I'll do one thing. I'll make another video for your language chapters. Right, so just do it. Make sure that you read it, okay? So that is it for today. Thank you.